strive for it, I'ma organize for it. Stay up in the night and in the morning, I'ma rise for it. Heart for it, mind for it, ears for it, eyes for it. Peace and a place on this earth for me and mine for it. Work for it, strive for it, I'ma organize for it. Stay up in the night and in the morning, I'ma rise for it. Heart for it, mind for it, ears for it, eyes for it. Peace and a place on this earth for me and mine for it.
Hey, peace. Thanks for tuning in to the Money, Power, Land, Solidarity podcast. On our first show of 2021, we're looking into an issue that's fundamental to the interests and questions that drive our podcast. Today, we're talking about labor exploitation in the construction industry. So far on this show, we've talked about the political economy of real estate development. We've talked about the large donations from developers and landowners to politicians. We've talked about the revolving door between private real estate and the city Department for Community Planning and Economic Development that pushes privatization and free market economics. We've talked about the link between police violence and the imperatives of developers who want to clear the city for a new high-rent class. But we have yet really to talk about the construction industry itself. Who builds the buildings? How are the construction sites operated? Who's profiting and who is being exploited? Today, we're joined by Samantha, a construction worker and organizer with CTUL, the Center for Workers United in Struggle. Samantha shares her experience on the job as a worker and as an organizer, lifting the curtain to show us the deep exploitation occurring where downward pressure from developers to find the cheapest labor possible leads to wage theft and endangerment of immigrant labor at the core of the non-union construction industry. As we fight for a new model of housing that provides sustainable, attractive housing for every member of our society, and a model of development that builds collective wealth and beauty for our neighborhoods. We must build solidarity with workers like Samantha and create a construction economy that offers thriving wages, real safety, and real power on the job. Our struggles for housing and for healthcare, for education, for safety, and for abolition are all connected. We offer our deepest respect and thanks to Samantha, to her fellow workers, and to CTUL for helping us bring this reporting to our listeners. Money, power, land, solidarity. Welcome to the Money, Power, Land, Solidarity podcast. We are here today with construction worker Samantha and CTUL. To open up, just to get into our conversation today, Samantha, could you share with us, how did you get started in the construction industry?
Empecé en la industria de construcción como
So
cualquier
I
persona.
began like any worker. I began from the bottom, picking up garbage, passing out tools on sites. That's how I first started working in construction in Texas. I was going from state to state. I started in remodeling, and then I started working in just general construction. And that's how I found framing. And that's what I do now is like that's what I did was framing of wood. That's what I liked the most. That's what I love doing. And that's what I went from state to state doing.
Wow. Where are you from originally?
Soy mexicana.
I am from Mexico. I don't really know whether to say whether I'm from here or from there, but my mom is from Michoacan and my dad is from Guerrero. I'm Mexican and I'm proud of it.
Absolutely. Could you talk a bit about how your work in construction brought you to CTUL?
Pues un caso de muchos.
So like a lot of workers, I was having an issue in my workplace. It took me a long time to even realize what was happening was a problem. For a long time, I thought it was me, but I came to realize that it really was my boss. So I was like a recruited worker. And this kind of lifestyle is like when you're working for them and they, are in charge of your housing and your transportation and pretty much your whole life. I was working around 15 to 17 hours a day in the summer. The days were just getting longer and we would keep working sometimes till we'd begin at 6 a.m. and go until 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. We never got overtime, and I didn't even know what overtime was.
Wow. When you say recruited worker, who does the recruiting, and when you're saying workers are brought in and their housing is dictated by the employer and the conditions of life, who is it that's doing that recruiting?
Cuando hablamos de
So
recluta,
recruited work, when I talk about recruited workers, it's when the boss tells you that you're going to work for me. There's no clocking in, there's no clocking out, there's no holidays or days off. You work for me, I pay for your living, I pay for your transportation. When there is work, you're going to work. When there's no work, I keep paying for your living. But you're pretty much dependent on them and they're in control of you. We're also not stable in one place. We're usually going from hotel to another hotel to another hotel. Often we're packed in, a lot of people like packed in like sardines. And our only purpose is to work. And really you depend on them because they know they have that power over you.
Yeah, cuando tuve la oportunidad de conocer muchísimos estados por trabajo.
So I had the opportunity to see a lot of states through my work because of how much travel there was. When we worked, I worked for 7 years in construction. 4 out of 5 of those years were in really critically bad conditions. Sometimes we would only have 1 meal a day. We would be in towns where there'd be no restaurants and no places to get food because they were so small. Sometimes the person who was in charge of our transportation, who would be the person that would drive us around in a truck, wouldn't want to take us somewhere, so we just wouldn't be able to leave. We often wouldn't get our full wage. We'd only get half of it. There was just a lot of instances of wage theft. We really just didn't have any rights. What brought me to CTUL was just these more, as these kept happening and as they became more frequent, there was issues with wage theft, with abuse, with discrimination, with sexism. All of these things kind of brought me to CTUL. I wouldn't have come to the organization without the support and of other workers. There were other workers I knew who had experience with the organization. And I just didn't know that there were resources or organizations out there like this that could teach us about our rights and actually help us change.
Wow. It takes a lot of courage and bravery and just strength to work through those conditions and then have the courage and the energy to stand up and try to organize and fight back and connect with other workers. I just want to show you my respect.
Gracias.
Could you talk about the difference between the unionized construction industry and the non-unionized construction industry? You talked a little bit about the conditions you were facing as a recruited worker. How does that fit into the bigger picture of the construction industry and kind of what, how is the industry structured and how does union versus non-union fit into that?
Sí, nunca he trabajado por unión. Apliqué.
So I have never worked in a union. I applied, but I started working at CTUL instead. But the difference between the union and and non-union industry, I know a lot of people who work in unions and they have benefits, they have health insurance, they have overtime once they work past 40 hours, they have schedules and scales for their salary. They have power in their workplace. When we talk about people who don't have unions, it's just, they're just on the complete other side of the fence. We don't have healthcare, we don't have access to overtime, we don't have a voice or a vote in our in our work conditions. They tell you what you have to do, and you just have to do it. You really can't fight back because there's a real fear there. You need that job. People have kids, people have rent to pay, you just have to accept what they give you because you know that you need that job. And there's not a lot of other options. When you work without a union, you have to accept a much lower pay, sometimes lower than even the minimum wage. You're risking heights, you're risking very cold weather or working in really hot weather. You're really suffering. You're not eating. Sometimes you only have one meal a day. And the reality is that if you waste their time, you're seen as wasting money, go to the bathroom or get water. They won't let workers have just their basic rights because it's always seen as as wasting their money. I'm thinking back, and I started working in this industry at either 15, 16 years old. Now I'm in my 30s and my body hurts, and it's not me, it's the boss. Even though I'm in a better place now than I was, it's still painful to think about because they ended up making the profit from the workers' hard work.
Do you see white supremacy or patriarchy show up in your workplace when in the construction industry?
Sí, y yo pienso que en un nivel muy alto.
Yeah, I see white supremacy and patriarchy at really high levels in the construction industry. As a woman, as a Latina woman, I think that they're just not everyone is going to even give you an opportunity to work in the construction industry. It's clear that we don't have the same value. They don't let you grow or have any growth within the industry. For example, I would often see white women in the construction industry. They would be working, doing less work than I would, but I would see they were able to have breaks and they were able to take lunches. They would even have several breaks throughout the day. They were given respect and shown respect. They were treated well, but I just never was treated that way. I didn't have those privileges. For me, they treated me just like any old worker. They didn't give me breaks. They put more work on me. They said, oh, you want to be in construction? So they would give me even harder work to do. Not just as a woman, but I also see the way they treat white people versus Latinos or people who aren't from this country. Maybe it's because of the color of our skin, or they know that we're not from this country, so they think that we don't have rights. But it's just really sad. We live in a capitalist world where the lighter skin you have, you can sit at the table, and the darker you are, you're going to have less opportunity and be seen as having less work.
Yeah. And this year, there were 3 construction worker deaths in Minnesota due to falls. And I think we see what you're describing in the fact that all of these workers were Latino in the non-union sector. What allows this to happen?
Pues para empezar, me da tristeza. Me da tristeza ver que,
to begin this, it makes me really sad. It really hurts. That people of my race, people with the color of my skin, people who are so young are dying in this industry. I was a construction worker and I loved it. And my dream is to be able to work in the construction industry up high, on heights, but with benefits and with proper protection, because people are dying because of a lack of training. You'll see that harnesses are broken, that there's missing pieces. When you say something to bosses, they'll just say, oh, no, it's fine. Just put it on anyway. Don't worry. Don't worry about it. You don't even have to wear it. It'll just trip you up anyway. We would sometimes not have helmets. The workers would all have different injuries from things falling on them. No one is really looking out for you or telling you you have to wear equipment or showing you how to wear a harness or, we'd see that our ropes were damaged, our equipment is old. And why? It's because there is a lack of accountability. There's no OSHA, there's no regulations, there's no one demanding they fix the equipment that they give trainings. People are dying really because they don't have the resources and they aren't trained and they don't have the education or the ways to complain and make a change when they do have that. You'll see that people will be working in the construction industry for years and not even know certain basic safety things. So, and then even with COVID, we're also seeing people aren't wearing masks, people aren't wearing gloves, and it's the same thing. It's because bosses just don't care. They want to make money and more money and more money. If a worker falls, who cares? There's going to be 3 more lining up to take his place. If a worker dies, there'll be 5 more ready to take his job. So to them, they just don't really care. And what happens is the one that's taking risks, the one that's working all day, the one who's tired and exhausted, those are the workers who are getting injured or dying.
Yeah.
And it comes to a lack of training and a lack of accountability in the construction industry. So yeah.
It's disgusting, and it makes me so angry to see how wealthy the developers are and the people who wear suits all day and go to nice lunches all day and talk to the politicians all day and celebrate all the new things being built. And it's the hardworking Black and brown, the people taking risks, the working class people who none of this is possible without, who just get treated terribly and exploited and swept under the rug. It's just, it infuriates me.
Me encanta que
So I'm happy you see it that way. I'm glad that you see it this way because it's our reality. Who has all the money? It's the guy who's sitting at home, the ones working, they're the ones going to the best restaurants, the ones on vacations, the one who's able to support his family. They're not the ones doing the work. But it's us, and we're getting half the pay that we deserve, and we need to see that doubled. Developers, they're the ones with the money. They're the ones at, sitting around the tables and relaxing and not doing anything. And we're the ones doing the work. We are risking our lives. We are the ones who are dying. One of the workers who died this past summer, I knew him. He was a cousin of a close friend of mine. And it's hard to even see the building that he built because I can't even look at it because, he died there and they just replaced him like it was nothing. They don't even remember him. They don't remember his name. Meanwhile, they keep making money and we're just keep working like nothing happened. And as we're seeing workers grow and this industry grow, they're the ones making the money. Their pockets are growing. So I'm happy you see it that way. Because now that I'm working in organizing, I feel I want to help. I see so many people suffering and people are falling on their work sites still. And I want to support these people.
Yeah. How do we do that? How do we support the workers and how do we hold the developers accountable? We've talked about wage theft, labor trafficking, the abuses and exploitation on the job you've described. How do we change that? What's your vision as an organizer, and what work are you all doing to change those circumstances?
Pues, en primera pienso que informando.
So first, I feel that we need to inform workers. Workers must know their rights. They must know that they do have rights and the right to not work on a job site where there is poor conditions. I know it's not easy to stand up to a boss. I know what it's like if, you see your equipment and you have to tell your boss that you need something different. It's not easy. But I see that, the big first step is so that making sure that workers know their rights. We need more work that is union. I think that we would avoid accidents and falls. Maybe not 100%. It is still a dangerous industry, but at the very least, we see that union work has more training, has more benefits, has better equipment. It may seem small, but it makes a huge difference for a worker. I do as an organizer is I inform workers. I tell workers that, you know, you can say no, you have the power to know your rights and to use your voice. But it's hard when we live in a country where there's so much racism and discrimination. We live somewhere where if you don't have a social security card, you just don't have the rights as everybody else. But people need to know that even if you don't have a social security number or card, your life still matters and you still deserve to be paid for your work, and your work deserves to have dignity. And if you don't stand up, no one else will. I hope to see women have better rights in construction. I know that, you know, I'm not the same maybe as a male worker. Maybe they are able to, you know, have more strength and lift heavier things, but I still think that we need to see women being treated with more respect and equality.
Bien, sería padrísimo que se implementara un código o que los desarrolladores implementaran ese.
What I think would be good is to see some sort of code adopted. We need developers to also be responsible for the kinds of conditions that they're setting and expecting. And this starts at the top with developers and goes all the way down to subcontractors and contractors and the other layers, because we need this basic standard in the non-union industry. Developers really need to think about who is doing the work and give us a basic standard of living across the board, not a different standard for Latino workers or white workers, because we're all the ones really doing the work. And we often see it's that Latinos are working really hard, and that's and working the hardest. And unfortunately, that's what I continue to see. So there needs to be accountability.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a good, positive, forward-looking place for us to wrap up our interview today. I just want to say our podcast, we started because we were looking at housing, you know, and gentrification, all the new investment coming into the city, and how it was, from our experiences, we see rich people getting more rich and poor people getting pushed out. But we haven't got a chance to really talk about what happens on the construction site. So your perspective for our listeners to talk about the type of exploitation that's actually underneath this billion-dollar industry, it's very important. We really appreciate you coming on the show. We really respect and the work of CTUL and the work of all the workers who are coming together to keep fighting. We'll make sure we link information to CTUL in the show notes, and just want to say thank you so much, Samantha, for joining us and for sharing your story and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. And yeah, hopefully it's not the last time we're here.
Absolutely. Solidarity with all the workers, united in struggle, money, power, land, solidarity.
We need money, land, solidarity. If you're funny, stand very far away from me. We have running plans about as far as they can see to keep them coming.